नमस्कार, नेपाल निर्माण 2072 मा स्वागत छ। म सुषमा श्रेष्ठ। जगदम्बा स्टिल देशको मेरुदण्ड संघको सहकार्यमा हिमालय टेलिभिजनले नेपाल निर्माण सम्मेलनको दोस्रो संस्करण सफलतापूर्वक सम्पन्न गरेको छ। दर्शकवृन्द, हामीले सम्मेलनमा भएको अन्तर्क्रियालाई देशवासीसम्म पुर्याउनको लागि नै यो कार्यक्रम तयार पारेका छौं। जुलाई 23 र 24 तारिक होटल हायतमा भएको अन्तर्क्रियाको पहिलो दिन भएका छलफलका निचोड हामीले प्रस्तुत गरिसक्यौं। आजको कार्यक्रमबाट हामी दोस्रो दिन गरिएको प्यानल छलफल समावेश गर्नेछौं। दोस्रो दिन एचडीआई प्यानल, एमएनसीज एन्ड एफटीआई प्यानल, नेपाल इन्क एन्ड इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स प्यानल र डिजास्टर म्यानेजमेन्ट प्यानलमा अन्तर्क्रिया गरिएको थियो। आज हामी एचडीआई प्यानल डिस्कसन प्रस्तुत गर्नेछौं। यसमा सहजकर्ताको भूमिका निभाउनु भएको थियो किङ्स कलेजका एक्जिक्युटिभ डाइरेक्टर नरोत्तम अर्यालले। इस प्यानलमा 3S म्यानेजमेन्टका सीईओ सोहन खत्री, कृषि विशेषज्ञ देवेन्द्र गौचन, डल्फिन एजुकेशन कन्सल्टेन्सीका अध्यक्ष प्रेम पाण्डे, रातो बंगला एजुकेशन फाउन्डेशनका डाइरेक्टर डाक्टर शान्ति दीक्षित, अक्टाभो सल्युसन प्रणालीका एमडी डाक्टर विधान दास र एमटी युनिभर्सिटीका डिन उज्जवल कुमार चौधरी सहभागी हुनुहुन्थ्यो। अब छलफलतर्फ लागौं।
Broadly speaking, as you know that, and sadly, Nepal ranks like 145th on world ranking on HDI. We can imagine that after this, devastating disaster, maybe like it will further be affected. So, in this context, I request all the, distinguished panelists to connect your thoughts and advice, maybe your strategies as to how to improve on this HDI and how your area can contribute to improving this HDI. So maybe without further ado, I would like to request, maybe to begin with, Mr. Sohan Khatriji.
Many occasions in the history of Nepal, we find missed opportunities in the form of natural disasters and calamities that has incurred the loss of lives and infrastructure. But again, we have been missing these opportunities many a times, and probably this particular time we should not be missing this opportunity of developing on the human side of this country. Nepal and Nepalese have shown amazing tolerance and resilience so far in every disasters. But again, we haven't been able to institutionalize this resilience so far for the benefit of broad country and society. So I think the solution should be to look at the human characteristics side of the human development. Human development, basically the indices, if you see in calculation of the Human Development Index, you will find it talks more on the side of the means than on the end side. The end should be, I think, a human being is truly developed or is a high on the Human Development Index if that human being is incapacitated to realize his or her full potential. So I think this time around, the focus of the country, government, and we all, as civil society, private sector, should be on development of the entrepreneurship at the bottom of the pyramid of this society. And how to connect the top of the pyramid of our Nepalese society to the bottom of the pyramid, and how to instill this entrepreneurial flair in the bottom of the pyramid should be the real focus and priority henceforth. What is this entrepreneurship that I'm trying to focus on is not only creating, managing, and delivering economic value and exchanging the economic value to the society. Entrepreneurship is not only about building a business or creating a business and managing it, but basically at the backdrop of it, if you see, it's a character. Basically, it allows a person to realize his or her full potential. It enhances the self-efficacy. It works on the independence index of yours. It gives you freedom. And all over the world, if we look at the literature, what we can find is the risk-taking propensity of the society has increased immensely post-disaster. And I suppose the hypothesis that I'm working on the basis of which I'm saying these things today, is that the risk-taking propensity of Nepalese society has also immensely increased post-April 25. So we need to capitalize on it as much as possible. The ceiling, the floor of the FDI is 50 lakh rupees, $5,000. Now, 50 lakh rupees can make or create many entrepreneurs in the villages, but that cannot be disintegrated. For one investment, you need for FDI, you need at least 50 lakh rupees. Now, it should be brought down. Basically, since we are focusing on the education part also in this panel today, so just one small solution. Why can't the top of the pyramid education institutes and students get linked to the bottom of the pyramid business models to come out of the dependency model and to do good for the overall society and basic unit of the society, the individuals, is instilling the entrepreneurial culture and instilling entrepreneurship and having more focus on the bottom of the pyramid and linking top of the pyramid of this society to the bottom of the pyramid. Thank you very much.
Healthcare has been a major issue in Nepal, and there are a lot of issues and challenges in the countries like ours. I am quite sure that the issues are almost similar in the whole of South Asia. So, in your an extensive experience and knowledge, expertise in the area, how do you sort of see the situation, maybe in the South Asian context itself, of the health conditions, and how can we sort of take it forward? So could you please share your thoughts on this?
Yeah. I have the following solutions. It is a composite manner which I thought that would be doing good for this country. We can call it as health sector reforms, but then it has to be in a concerted manner. Number one, I'm mostly concentrating on the public sector facilities, apart from the private sector, understanding fully well that the private sector does have a presence here. Number one, modification and renovation of the existing building facilities that we have, along with the infrastructure development. Number two, we have a quality assurance leading to possibly an accreditation system. I know fully well that Nepal does not have an accreditation system. We can develop it, not a problem. If not, we can have a simple quality assurance system, and then they can be done. Number three, there is an issue on account of payment. So I strongly feel health insurance. There is some, I understand fully well that Nepal has taken some initiative on account of health insurance, not full-blown, not fully implemented. There are problems there which I can deliberate on them. A lot of behavioral change communication, on account of the providers. The providers are the doctors, the nurses. There's a typical migration as usual from the public sector to the private sector, for the reasons known to all of us that, Number five is a lot of training and development. And it's not necessarily on disaster drills and so on and so forth, but it's mostly on processes and systems, clinical systems, monitoring the outcomes, and managerial systems and monitoring their outcomes. And lastly, is definitely a monitoring and evaluation. So this is what the model I had envisaged, and I'm convinced that this will do good on account of the existing situation. It is doable, it is manageable. Maybe the terrain is a little difficult. We can phase it out on account of district by district. What in a hospital, in doing an infection control program, just do up the operating room, the CSSD and the ICU, and we are done. And a little bit of camouflaging of the building infrastructure apart from the little equipments. What might take time is behavioral change communication and training and development. That is a little difficult, After all, I understand the socio-cultural value system of practicing of medicine here, and I have experience in other parts of the world. I feel so that will take some time. Infrastructural development will not take time. In insurance, in health insurance, what might be a challenge which I have had an experience is, number one, we need to have a costing of the procedures. How much would a appendectomy cost here? How much would a CABG cost here? That cost is variable from the public sector to a private sector. I understand there's a Grandi hospital in the private sector, there is an Avi hospital, but there are public sector hospitals as well. The cost of doing a procedure is different in different kinds of hospitals. And then based on the costing, an average or policy can be taken out. What are the costs that can be reimbursed to Once that is done and then the insurance is in place, then the patient or the consumer is the boss. Then there is no difference between a public sector or a private sector. The patient is free to go to any place. And then there is equivocal distribution of healthcare. And then there is a demand, So then the disparity between the public sector and private sector ceases to exist. So that is the ultimate that we are going to achieve. All said and done, I think nothing goes without monitoring and evaluation. Monitoring and evaluation through a third-party agents would be the apt thing to do, which needs a seasoned, experienced team, because there are multifactorial work which are going on, whether they are plotting it on a chart or a Gantt chart or a bar chart, and then a strong, robust system should be in place. Eventually, I would feel that if a little bit of aggression is there, then probably things can be achieved in the next 1 to 2 years.
For now, let me move to Dr. Gautam. So he belongs to an entirely kind of different sector, agricultural economics. So, sir, could you, would you like to shed some light on your area?
Okay. Well, I should say agriculture should be given priority for revival, reconstruction, and development, particularly in earthquake-affected areas, as well as for whole Nepal, because it is critical to the livelihood of over 2/3 of the population, and it is major source of income, employment, and export earnings for the country. Indeed, agriculture is an engine of growth, and it is a principal platform for human development and social welfare. However, the productivity of agriculture in Nepal is very low. And because of the subsistence farming, low value addition, low commercializations, and also low use of improved new technologies. And so because of lack of the modernization and commercializations, the productivity, land productivity, labor productivity is low as compared to many of the developed countries and even in neighboring countries. And the major problem for us to rebuild agriculture and to revive whole economy is the chronic problem of labor scarcity. Labor scarcity because of youth migration, male migration, and feminization in agriculture, because women are overburdened in many of the hill mountain areas, and there are no males, youth male, to do agricultural operations. And that has a lot of implication for cost of production. The production cost has increased. It's very difficult for small farmers to come to agriculture because of high cost of production, because of high labor wage, and also high input prices. Because of our complex topography, lack of transportations, and so on, the cost of production is very high. And that is a major challenge. And the other challenge we face is the loss of prime agricultural land into urban uses, non-agricultural process, housing and constructions. I mean, the prime productive agricultural land has been displaced, replaced by the concrete structures in many of the Tarai and many of the, wherever road goes, new connectivity occurs, there are new productive agricultural land has been massacred. So that has a lot of implications for future food security and increased productivity. And unless we have a suitable land use, well, we have a land use policy, very good, but that has not been implemented well. And the legal framework for restricting the conversion of agricultural land into non-agricultural land is not possible because of lack of legal framework at present. And the other issues are, and many of our traditional crop varieties, genetic resources, agriculture, what we call biodiversity, have been, eroding because traditional knowledge is traditional knowledge is declining among people, farmers, because of the lack of attraction among youth on agriculture. There's no transformation and transfer of traditional knowledge on farming to young generations. And so the challenge is how to attract young generation on agriculture. And that is a complex challenge, and unless we address this issue, rebuilding agriculture, revival of economy. Whole economy is very difficult, even in earthquake-affected areas and many other places. So for that, what I would suggest is the most important is we have to address the problem of labor scarcity. That is, we have to go for mechanizations, but appropriate small-scale mechanization that are youth-friendly, women-friendly, because in the most of the areas are hill terrain, very small plots, and we need small-scale, appropriate agriculture machineries that are friendly to youth and women. So that is, I think, that will help to transfer our small-scale farming into more modern and more productive. And we have some experiences. There are some transformation of some of those farming systems where people have gained some of the better, value addition and commercialization in those aspects.
ब्रेकपछि पुनः स्वागत छ हिमालय इभेन्ट्स नेपाल निर्माण 2072 मा। अब फेरि हामी एसडीआई अर्थात ह्युमन डेभलपमेन्ट प्यानल डिस्कसन जोड्दै छौं।
Let me turn to Mr. Prem Pandey. So could you share your thoughts on the topic?
My topic is like why we are not coming out with a strategy and plan to bring back some of the creative students from the university who are studying in United States, Australia, UK, New Zealand, and the other part of the world. Because since it's being in education, even I used to travel a lot, so I've seen Nepalese students are quite talented. They are almost toppers on the university, and we have seen they are the ambassador of the universities and all. But so these students, if the nation can utilize those students by giving them a good facilities in our country and like providing them the remunerations like what they definitely are looking forward. So definitely like tomorrow that will make sense of building up the nations and all. Tomorrow the importance of these students, because they are studying in a developed country and they are studying with a new curriculum that has been developed in the world. So this kinds of stuff gets more important in our country. Like we are an underdeveloped country, so definitely it plays a very big role for our country. So this is what I would like to request even to the government part, like if they can come up with a different section to look after those universities and bring them back to Nepal. And like even this can be held by the private sector as well. This is a more important factor which I have seen in our country. Like since we recruit the students, but still we say like Pailo Desh, Pachi Videsh. So like what I feel like if the government also can take some step forward to bring those talented students in Nepal and build the nations, that will be a big achievement for the country. That's all what I want to say. Thank you so much.
So now I think I need to turn to the only lady in the panel. Ma'am, would you like to share your thoughts first? And then definitely I'll get back to you with questions later.
Nepal has come a long way in education because public education actually started only in the 1950s. So in 60 plus years, there has been a lot of gains. For example, the literacy rate in the 50s was only 2%. Now it is 66%. There were literally 300 schools then. Now there are 36,000, 500 some schools. Now we have 98% of children attending schools and with virtual gender parity. Just in 1984, we only had 52% of children going to school, and among these, 70% were men, and only 30% were boys, and 30% were girls. So we have to celebrate, and we have to know that we're doing well. But the world doesn't stop for us. This is a race. This is literally how you improve yourself so that you are able to compete with the others. And definitely in that competition, Nepal is very, very low. Our education system is archaic. There's only chalk and talk. Children are taught to memorize, and they go and take the exams through memorization. They don't have any skills. So they're actually very upset when they get very high marks and then nobody hires them. So it's something that really needs to change, and changed right in the bottom, because research has shown that literally 2% of children in grade 2 are able to read the alphabet, and 20% of children in grade 3 are able to read the alphabet. This is the early grade reading. So what one calls the Matthew effect starts right here, where the haves get richer and the have-nots get poorer. The children who are reading at a very young age, at the early grades, will keep improving and going up, whereas the gap will keep increasing for those who do not, and these are the dropouts. So we have a huge dropout in the school system, and then eventually the children who get into grade 10 and take their SLC exams, we know the results, 70% fail. This time it was 66% fail, and we celebrated, only 66% of the government school children failed, So this is not how it should be, and things should change. And the April 25 and subsequent May 12th, earthquakes, I think, have really given us an opportunity. We really need to look at things with a completely different angle. Up until now, schools were started because some individual felt the need, like maybe an ego, maybe the excitement, maybe had the resources. Okay, I'm going to start a school here, and this is going to, there are going to be this many teachers and this many students, and we have a population of students who will come. So it wasn't organized. So post-earthquake, at least for the 14 districts that have had major devastation, there should be much more planning being done. And, as I started researching, I realized that there were so few VDCs, the Village Development Committees, in Lalitpur anymore, because everything has become a metropolitan area, whether or not they have the basic necessities for that. So what should happen is look at a village or a metropolis and then decide, should the schools that existed before exist as they were? Should they be scaled down? Should they be expanded? Should the older children go to another school with better facilities? Should there be health posts near the school so the children can access? Should school become centers for the community where they can come and learn some things or help children engage? But here we need a huge school. It needs an auditorium. It needs lots of facilities. They need to have internet, all kinds of things. And this is really an opportunity. And I feel that if Nepal doesn't take this, then we lost the opportunity. The policymakers will think about it seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dixit, for your insightful thoughts. Now let me go to Professor Chaudhary. Professor Chaudhary, you've seen Nepal from inside, from outside. You've worked all over the world. So could you please share your thoughts based on your experiences all over the world, including Nepal, so as to how we can sort of improve our education system to contribute to the ASDI?
It's good to hear Dr. Dixit, because what I'll be telling is in continuation of the spirit and the content that she has just now told. First of all, I'd like to mention that out of the nearly $60 billion GDP of the country, the educational investment is still below 3 billion. And in my opinion, on one side, the investment from the government side has to increase. And on the other side, maybe 2/3 or more, could be up to 75%, 3/4, should be for school education, from primary to school education. Because government's focus must be largely on the education at the grassroots. Because once the grassroots are strong, higher education can have its own manifestations. So the first thing, primary education and secondary education should be compulsory and accessible to the entire country. And on that, the primary responsibility is of the government. A very minor responsibility is of the private sector. It will be different in the context of higher education, where private sector has a major role. But in the primary sector and secondary particularly, so education up to 16 years should be compulsory, and government education could be free as well. I do not know the exact status just now of the government education at the secondary level. That's one suggestion. The second suggestion is, there is no policy in the country at the moment for distance education. To the best of my knowledge, there is neither a policy nor a government-led or instituted distance education university in the country. Whereas the country has mountainous regions, far off terrains, it is important that there should be distance education policy. And this is the only South Asian country, except Bhutan, which does not still now have a distance education policy. In situations like these, which are disaster-driven, disaster-led situation, distance education could provide succor to a large number of people. That's the second point I would like to mention. The third point, skills. The focus of education in South Asia, unfortunately, for a very long time, has been on degrees, or has been on qualifications, and not on skills. Education there are three aspects to education: knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Unfortunately, we are highly skewed in favor of knowledge and very less on favor of skills. So I'm happy to note that in India, this is the situation in India too, largely. In India, the government in Delhi, the state government of Delhi currently is in the process of finalizing a skills university, a vocational skills university. On those lines, there should be thinking here as well, because skills is the only route and the sure route to basic economic development. Without skills, just having a lot of knowledge would make no difference at the grassroots. At a different level, at a higher education level, okay, knowledge gains ground. This is the next point I would like to mention this. Having said this, at the higher education level, the flexibility towards private education should increase. The private university policy also, there has been talks, there have been initial some private-public partnership and some level of progress, not as bad as the situation in distance education is. But however, there is a huge scope in the private university sector in the country. There is no harm for those who can afford to pay to get an access to high-quality private education. There's no harm. It's a liberal economy and private property institutionalized. There's no harm in that. However, government's money should be more focused on the primary and secondary education. That's for sure. That's for sure. So focus should be in the higher education. Like another point I'd like to say, both in government and private sector, at the higher education, there is no need, or I do not think, particularly in countries like Nepal, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, the focus should not be on liberal arts, science, and commerce education only, or largely. I'm not against the education of liberal arts in general. I'm talking of the focus. The focus should be largely on professional education. Education leading to gainful employment. So if that's the focus, leading to gainful employment, that education could be interdisciplinary. I do understand that liberal values have to be inculcated, even in professional education. I do not dispute that. But the liberal values can be brought in through flexi-learning system. So these are some of the observations that I would like to put forth with respect to a restructuring of education in this country.
दर्शकवृन्द तपाईं नेपाल निर्माण 2072 को साथमा हुनुहुन्छ। फेरि पनि यहाँलाई स्वागत छ। समृद्धि भौगोलिक विकाससँग मात्र जोडिएको छैन, मानव विकास सबैभन्दा अहम विषय हो समृद्धिका लागि। त्यसैले हामीले ह्युमन डेभलपमेन्ट प्यानलका रूपमा मानव विकासका बारेमा स्पष्ट खाका खोज्ने प्रयास गरेका छौं। अब फेरि छलफलतर्फ लागौं।
Now let me shift to the next round of the questions. I will be putting I'm sort of like asking you questions. So again, maybe let's begin with Sohan sir. So you basically talked about the importance of grassroots entrepreneurship, and you also mentioned during your presentation that like because of this earthquake, or maybe like it has been reflected on our sort of like risk-taking attitude, and you also mentioned that it has maybe increased our risk-taking behavior. But then do you really think that this only having risk-taking attitude will help in promoting grassroots entrepreneurship, or we need to work on enhancing the whole ecosystem to sort of like build the grassroots entrepreneurship? What's your take on this?
Of course, the risk-taking propensity being higher is not a sufficient condition, but a necessary condition if we are talking about entrepreneurship. Naturally, we need to develop on other factors. We need to create a good market system. We need to make policies which facilitates the access of various resources to the bottom of the pyramid entrepreneurs easy. For example, World Bank Group publishes a report called Doing Business for 122 countries, and so does for Nepal too. Our rank is very, very low in doing business in Nepal. For example, registering for the properties, registering the business, liquidation, this legal processes, access to market, and all of that. We are the, again, I mean, a very low rank in all of these factors. As Professor Chaudhary pointed out, if I need to talk about the if I need to focus myself on education and then this bottom of the pyramid entrepreneurship, yes, I completely agree that we need to work out on the skills level and we need to work out on the attitude level, right? And we need to make all of those factor of endowments for doing business or for creating an entrepreneurial venture or startups much more easy, and policies should be such. For example, I'll give you two examples. One, as I already gave an example of the FDI, we do not have policy which allows for crowdfunding or crowdsourcing of the funds. There's no particular policy of the government which allows us to, amass small funds and invest that at the various ventures, to the various ventures at the bottom of the pyramid or wherever. Just yesterday, monetary policy was out. We are talking about increasing the capital of banks and financial institutions, commercial banks. Let me give an example. Commercial banks to 8 billion rupees, but we haven't focused on the policy of mobilizing that capital to the bottom of the pyramid. Still, it's not very much clear how are we going to take these deposits and funds collected in the urban cities to the bottom of the pyramid. However, there should be concrete policies where this bank and financial institutions would be allowed, without taking much risk, to invest at the bottom of the pyramid. So it's a risk-taking propensity. That it has created, and it going higher means it has created a fertile land for entrepreneurship, but again, it's just a sufficient condition, necessary condition, not a sufficient condition. Right. I think there has to be certain priority sectors which has to be made absolutely free from so-called politics. Why I'm calling so-called politics, I mean, principally we may say we cannot escape out of politics and we are not free out of politics, it's concern of everybody. But I don't think Nepal is ready for that. There has to be certain sectors like education, health sector, which should be completely free from this political game. It should be run by the experts. Now, in terms of skills, okay, how many of us, especially males here, post-April 25, we all were looking for barbers in Kathmandu, and how much worth of chili do we import? 3 billion. So what I'm trying to say is, haircutting has that much of potential here, and chili is showing us an opportunity of 3 billions. Right, just chili, the green chili actually, the green and red chili. So skills, I think, yes, we should have plans to certify it formally, and that plan should be initiated by the government. But that particular certification is first of all given by the market. And I think market is ready to give that certification to anybody, I mean, no matter what creed, caste, and region the fellow comes from, or even the country the fellow comes from. Right? So I think, yes, we need to have certain policy which certifies. Okay, fine. I mean, yes, so many youths are going, abroad as migrant laborers. I mean, and our economy is also based upon remittance. My point is, well, if it has to based upon remittance, and we think they should, I mean, this labor migration should be, let's create highly skilled laborers in our country and let's export them.
Let me go to Dr. Dikshit. You also wanted to respond to this.
I just wanted to add a little bit about skills for students. I don't think we should wait for organizations such like City, Viti, or other organizations that will take some students, but their capacity is so small. We really need to go right to schools. Like the government has instituted vocational training, but the problem is everything is chalk and talk. So you do vocational, you do sewing, or you could sew like this. Or you do, you can play, exactly, nothing is hands-on. So if we just change that, and life will be so much more fun for these students, and the skills will be just a part of their growing up, and Nepal will change in the next 10 years that we would never imagine that it would. So I think government has to take it seriously, and I think they are hesitant because just recently I heard that, because there is vocational training from grades 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So then the government is trying to say that in grades 6 and 7, 6, 7, 8, maybe they should just have soft skills and not really hard skills. But what is soft skill in vocational training? And I heard later that it was like skills of humanity and being nice to people and all that. But that you start from the day you are born, or from thing. So grade 6 children can start doing some vocational hard skills. And the problem is unfortunately I have to say this because we're so donor driven and directed by donors that they feel that then we will create child labor. This is child labor. But how is working in schools to develop skills going to be considered child laborers? They can nail a nail and put their picture straight. They can, fix a thing. But it's like education and skills have been so separated that it seems like such a big political decision to implement a practical vocational training curriculum, and I think that's where we need to.
National Skill Development Council, NSDC, has been created in India exactly for this purpose under PPP model, where two-thirds of the investment is by the private party and one-third by the government, and there are 99 skill sets, 99 courses finalized, and certification is by the government of India. So this has been now schools are encouraged to also start this, and private entrepreneurs can also do that. This can be done along with education, beyond education, along with a part-time job or whatever. So if this sort of thing, skill revolution, yet it has not, this is a very vast country, India, so it takes time. But this sort of an approach of creating PPP model and a national sort of skill development plan or mission, if brought. Now, digital mission is also coming where compulsory internet and computer connection in every government school is being made compulsory. So if these things can be done, and should be done in fact, then the skill revolution will start. And the skill will bring in entrepreneurship. A person who is skilled will have the desire to excel further.
Right, Professor Chaudhary, further to that, you also mentioned about the Khori, dimension of higher education during your talk before. I was just going through a study done by the Economist and some intelligence unit for British Council. It was conducted throughout South Asia, and it has clearly highlighted the problems and the gap of in higher education of South Asia. It also talks about the gap. There is a demand of some kind of people in industry, right? The universities are not producing the kind of people that the industry needs. There is a serious lack of systematic interface and collaboration between the industry and the academia, and the government doesn't have such a integrated policy which caters to the development needs of the country. So what's your thought as to how we should be moving forward and to address this kind of gap?
Every engineering college, if makes compulsory that every year there should be one project, particularly in the third and the fourth years, the final 2 years, one project taken, live project taken from the industry, and that has a specific credit or marks given. If every B school, as you are also leading a prominent B school here, every B school makes it compulsory that there could be 10 months of classes, but 2 months of internship compulsory. And these 2 months of internship should have specific, defined, well-defined, role play. I mean, what they have to do within that internship, not just going to the organization and coming back. Specific projects. And 1/3 of the education of engineering, health sciences, and management, law, media design. In fact, media design is hardly developed here. So all these areas, 1/3 of education should be delivered by stalwarts from the industry, practitioners from the industry. 1/3 or even a little more. But there should be a substantial amount. If these few things are done, the integration of education with industry will begin. There could be other areas, but due to lack of time, I'm restricting to this.
Yeah, Dr. Das, you want to respond to this?
There is a public sector which is called NSDC. They fund. They're just funding agencies. But then there is a market, like the way you said. There is something called Health Sector Council. I confine myself only to health sector. So health sector is an offshoot of CII, Confederation of Indian Industries. So I'm sure all of you know Dr. Naresh Trehan. So he happens to be the chairman of that. So we all have to get a certificate with his, the logo of it. So this is market driven. So it has to be driven, but the certification has to have a market value. Eventually he has to get a job. And the trainer like me, currently we are training 1,000. The skills that we are training, the range for our general duty attendants, nursing aides, we can go up to laboratory technicians. We have a mandate now to take 50,000 for 10 years. I do not know whether I can do it or not, but if the funds are given to me, then probably I can take it on. So that is the linkage between the market and the public sector. So if the funds, like entrepreneurship or, eventually the schools after the school hours, we don't own training centers all over. We don't own them. So we can lease them. So that is what they promote, that he leases the school after the school hours for 2 hours or 3 hours, because the education program is about 250 hours. 240 hours of classroom training plus on the hospital training. The nurse has to be told how to draw a sample of blood.
Thanks, Dr. Das. I think like the same thing can be connected to our agriculture as well. On the one hand, Dr. Kochan, during your talk, you highlighted on the scarcity of labor. A lot of workers are labor is getting migrated.
There are policy issues and also the incentive mechanisms. For agriculture, specifically agriculture, there is no attraction from young generations. The major issue is the cultural hairness. What we call culturally, it is low paid. It should be done by the uneducated person. That's a cultural dilemma, and that is still persists in the mind of the people. And so many parents would not like to make their daughters or son to involve in agriculture, and that is one issue. And other sector is also, we have also not only the agricultural labor scarcity, also scarcity of trained, skilled agricultural technicians who can advise the rural farmers to motivate and train in agriculture sectors. And that is a major issue, and lack of an institutional problem. We don't have adequate, like CTVT is one of the issues. That's not adequate enough, and also to provide lower level, grassroots level technicians and to support, to advise rural farmers, women, and to go into agriculture.
फेरि पनि स्वागत छ नेपाल निर्माण 2072 मा। पर्याप्त स्रोत र साधन हुँदाहुँदै मुलुकले आर्थिक उन्नति गर्न नसकेको अवस्थालाई मनन गर्दै 2071 सालमा हिमालय टेलिभिजनले नेपाल निर्माण कार्यक्रमको सुरुवात गरेको थियो। विकासको लागि अहम भूमिका खेल्ने सरकारवाला क्षेत्रहरूसँग विचार विमर्श गर्दै विकास निर्माणका लागि आवश्यक सूत्र पहिल्याउने प्रयास स्वरूप आयोजना गरिएको कार्यक्रम सफल भयो। त्यसैको निरन्तरता हो नेपाल निर्माण 2072। अब ह्युमन डेभलपमेन्ट प्यानलको छलफललाई नै हामी जोड्दै छौं।
Premji, do you want to add anything on the gap of the skills or something like that, especially on our higher education?
What I would like to say, especially on the topic of mine as well, and the skill and education, like Samu sir was telling for the expertise one, is there are some policies in the international market where the skilled, the people can migrate to, like in the country like Australia, Canada, and all, definitely, if they are quite skilled enough. And also, I would like to top up a few stuff on the point of Dr. Chaudhary, like what happened, like, it's a very good idea which you have spoken right now, like with the internship for the students while they're running the course and all. There is a policy in, like, even in UK, if you take an example of the UK, there is a policy for the undergraduate students, which is known as a sandwich course. It's a sandwich course, where the students, if the course is of 3 years, the students goes for 2 years of educations, and then after on the sandwich course, they get 1 year of full placement courses, which is paid. And then after again, they get a 1 year of study. And now what happened with that practical experience, tomorrow if the students is good enough on his work, then tomorrow after completion of the course also, that even the company hired the students and they get an opportunity to work in the international companies and all.
Dr. Das, I think like in Nepal we have had a very important, sort of like an important issue. On the one hand, we have like private hospitals and private provisions, which are of course like very expensive and very like hard for the commoners to afford. On the other hand, like our public like provisions, services, health services are not like as per the standards in terms of quality. So I think this has been one of the biggest challenges in improving our health condition. So do you have any thoughts as to how to improve the conditions of public, maybe like public provisions and facilities?
Yeah. So it's a very simple model. The model encompasses that we need to have a standard. The standard should have 3 components: structural standard, process standards, and outcome standards. I am made to believe that there is some activity going on the district hospitals. I don't believe that public sector and private sector could be, different. I believe there is a need for a regulation which regulates both the public as well as the private sector. On the basis of the standard, supposing we need to have a district hospital or a primary health center or a 100-bedded hospital, so there will be structural standard. 100 beds, this many square feet of construction. This is the floor area ratio. This is the size of the operating room. You can't have an operating room in 200 square feet. There is some, benchmarks. So an intensive care room bed, how much space do you allocate? How much space do you allocate for the general ward? So this is a spatial requirement. Then there is manpower requirements. How much is the manpower? Depending on the workload. It's not on a norm that you have a 100-bedded hospital, so therefore you need to have 20 doctors. No, it doesn't work that way. A 100-bedded hospital would have a workload. What is the workload? How many number of OPD patients? How many number of IPD patients? So with that, there is a calculation that we do that encompasses the manpower. On the equipment, it is on the scope of services. So basic diagnostics are there, laboratory and imaging, but scope of services, if there is a cardiology, then we need to have a cath lab. So that is the enumeration. Processes start from registration and end with discharge. So the whole processes are mapped out and it is written. How and outcome, of course. What is happening in these kind of developing countries that nothing is in place. What I said we need to have all in one shot. It doesn't happen sporadically. You do one thing today and the other thing, it will die off.
Public health sector.
Well, it's hard to say because, the government would want to give free health services, but doesn't have the resources. And the resources that exist are also mismanaged in a way. And so when I worked a lot in public health, in the beginning, but you can't just give promises. Public health is just giving promises, do this, do that, be clean, have oral rehydration. But there is no, if you don't have supportive services following it, then just education doesn't help. It just becomes health education. So, there have to be, primary, secondary, tertiary, referral services, and of course in a pyramid. So unless that happens in the country, then there is no faith and it will not work.
Okay, so maybe like only one question representing the whole audience. Please identify yourself and please name the panelists whom you want to direct your question to.
Myself, Rosi Lamitsani Busal, lecturer Kusum. My question is directed to Sheila ma'am because I also come from the education fraternity. The recent budget in education has been the lowest in the decade. That's what we've been hearing. And in the wake of the current disaster, I think the budget had to be even more. But that's beside the point. What I would want to also ask and then know from you, what kind of even the PPP model that Professor Chaudhary had raised, if you had to give your ideas on the kind of private public partnership model in school education or for school education that you can really, because you've worked with government closely also. So what would be the top 2 priorities for the government regarding school education?
Rato Bangla actually is already doing a PPP with the government. We reserve 18% of the tuition fees that the children pay to our school, the private school Rato Bangla, and use it to help government schools develop, and this is how we went to Dailek. Right now, the basic and the most priority would be to go into preschool, to develop a wonderful preschool curriculum and make a 10-year plan and put everything, in place so that those children who are like 3-year-olds right now, we don't have to say, oh, they didn't get the exposure, they didn't get the skills, they didn't get the thing. So we need to really go down, and that is going to be a big challenge because, everybody's thinking of tertiary education and higher education, but going to the masses and going at a very young age is the thing to do because of the way our brains function. Our brains are very, very smart right in the beginning, and if we sort of expose them to the proper, methodologies, then these children will really do well, and our nation's development will hinge on how well we treat our very young. So I would really love to see that.
Thank you all the panelists for your wonderful thoughts, and thank you ladies and gentlemen in the audience for your kind attention and participation. Thank you so much.
नेपाल निर्माण सम्मेलनको छलफलमा देश निर्माणका लागि कार्यशैली तथा नीतिगत सुधार गर्नुपर्नेमा जोड दिएका थिए सहभागी विज्ञहरूले। देश विकासको आधार भनेको मानवीय सोच र सिपको उपज हो, अनि त्यही सोच र सिपको परिकल्पना साकार पार्नु अर्को महत्त्वपूर्ण कुरा। बहस र छलफल धेरै गरिने तर व्यावहारिक रूपमा काम हुन सकेन भने त्यसको औचित्य समाप्त हुन्छ। जबसम्म आफ्नै देशमै दक्ष जनशक्ति निर्माण हुन सक्दैन तबसम्म देश निर्माण हुन सक्दैन। दक्ष जनशक्ति निर्माणका लागि शिक्षा क्षेत्रको विकास र युवाहरूलाई तालिम तथा सिप विकासमा जोड दिनुपर्ने कुरा छलफलका क्रममा निस्किएका थिए। साथमा विदेशमा उच्च शिक्षा हासिल गरिरहेका युवाहरूलाई आफ्नै देशमा काम गर्ने वातावरण बनाइनु पर्नेमा पनि जोड दिएको थियो। आजलाई यति नै। अब भोलि देश निर्माणका लागि वैदेशिक लगानी भित्र्याउन के गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने विषयमा विज्ञहरूको विचार लिएर आउने नै छौं MNCs and FDI प्यानलमा। आजलाई बिदा पाऊँ। नमस्ते।